Good afternoon, everybody. So I'm going to ask you guys to close your eyes for a moment. I'm not asking you guys to close your eyes because I'm nervous and I want to deliver my speech in front of an audience who can't see. But I'm asking you to close your eyes and transport yourself to the summer after you graduate high school and before you entered your first year of university. So go ahead and transport yourself to that summer and think of the emotions that you're feeling that summer. Now, for most of us, that summer was characterized by a great deal of excitement, just like I'm excited right now. We got to this amazing school called UBC, and we're about to embark on a life-changing journey. But that summer is also characterized by a great deal of nervousness because we were forced to give up some things before we entered our freshman year of college. Now, some of us were forced to give up the coziness of our bedrooms in our parents' home for a slightly smaller living space, which, let's face it, ended up looking like this after the first month or so. And those of us who weren't lucky enough to find housing on campus were forced to leave our cozy bedrooms for that slightly sketchy 300-foot square feet basement suite somewhere in East Vancouver that may or not have been infested with mice. And true story, that was actually me. I lived in a house infested with mice and toxic black mold, and it was an experience. Others of us were forced to give up delicious home-cooked meals from our mom or our dad for a strict college budget, which often involved eating food that could be eaten cold, heated in under 5 minutes, or ordered over the telephone. Now, but all of this is a normal part of life. When students make their transformation from high school to university, they're forced to give up some things in the hopes of becoming more mature as they venture down the path towards adulthood. But there's one thing that seems to have made it from high schools across the world to universities like UBC without being noticed. Something that I firmly believe belongs in the annals of secondary schools because it prevents students from making that critical step towards maturity. And that, my friends, is Model United Nations, or MUN for short. Now, for you guys who don't know what MUN is, it's a type of stimulation conference that brings students together to discuss and debate critical issues of facing our world. But the trick is that students who attend these conferences are meant to pretend to be a diplomat from a certain country and embody the views of this country for the duration of the conference. Now, by the end of the conference, which usually lasts between 2 to 4 days, students are expected to have worked together to create a resolution document outlining how they would go about solving the issue at hand. From Vancouver to Vienna, over 1,500 of these conferences exist for secondary students alone, and news media websites like the New York Times and National Public Radio tout the benefits of attending such conferences. Now, I'm not going to lie to you guys, I too myself was once hooked on these conferences. Now, some people talk about the dangers of being addicted to cigarettes. I'm going to talk about the dangers of being addicted to MUN. In high school, I attended conferences in Hungary and Ireland and the Netherlands, and I was actively involved with the MUN team here on our campus. But something changed. After my second year of university, I decided to take a semester off, and I traveled to Washington, D.C., where I worked as a research analyst at a major policy think tank dealing with the Middle East. And every day that I worked at this think tank was like Christmas for a political science student. And as a Muslim boy who never celebrated Christmas, this was a big deal for me. I attended hearings on Capitol Hill dealing with the uprising in Syria, and I had really passionate and intense conversations about domestic reforms around the office water cooler. But most importantly, at age 19, I was actively involved with the policy process in the United States. I was able to author an op-ed piece about the war between Turkey and the PKK in a top-tier media source. I was able to co-author a piece about Turkish military capabilities in the event of a war with Syria in an academic journal. And my boss allowed me to contribute and edit his articles, which were featured on the New York Times, Al Jazeera, BBC, and other news sources. See, for so long, I was used to being one of these guys. I was used to either being the delegate of Djibouti or the delegate of Belgium and pretending to make a difference. I attended these conferences and I wrote resolution papers that no one would care about or would read about after the conference was over. I was stuck in this paradigm that my voice and my opinions as an undergraduate student didn't count. It didn't matter, so long as I didn't have a PhD in Ottoman history or a master's in public policy. I firmly believed that I wouldn't be taken seriously until after I graduated college. So when I returned to campus the following fall, myself and a group of students, professors, and UBC administrators decided to create an organization on campus that would allow the voices of students to be heard in key policy debates affecting our local, national, and even international community. We wanted to create an organization that would allow that science student who had an amazing idea about healthcare and have her voice heard in Washington, D.C. Or take that political science student who had an awesome idea about conflict resolution and have his voice heard in Ottawa. We created this organization called the Policy Scholars Forum. And that's sort of what I want to talk about today. And in creating this organization, it's been about a year now, and the main critique lobbied at us is that undergraduate students could not conduct field research in the same capacity as a more seasoned professional at a think tank in Ottawa or Washington, D.C. So this past spring, myself and a group of friends who are actually sitting in the audience right now, decided to take it upon ourselves and debunk this theory. And going about debunking this theory, we only know how to do it one way, and that's to actually conduct work that a think tank would conduct, and that's to analyze policy. So in the spring, we decided to analyze a critical issue, and that was the new Turkish constitution that was being debated in Parliament in Ankara. And it was a big deal for many reasons. The first reason was that it was the first time in the history of the Turkish Republic that a civilian-written constitution was going to occur, and it was also the first time that the Turkish government was going to enshrine certain rights for its largest minority, the Kurds. And also because being Turkish, I sort of forced it upon themselves and made them actually undertake this research assignment. So we started by just emailing a bunch of various people in Turkey. We emailed political leaders, we emailed religious leaders, minority leaders, and civil rights organizations with a simple email. We introduced ourselves as Canada's first student-run policy think tank, and we asked them for a bit of their time in order to get a better understanding of the political climate on the ground in Turkey and whether this new constitution was going to pass or not. And in our minds, we were going to send this email, and then maybe we'd have a Skype conversation, maybe we'd exchange some emails, but it turned to something more, much more. We got a great deal of feedback, positive feedback from all these people, and we sort of showed this positive feedback to UBC, and we were able to get a grant, and I was able to travel to Istanbul in August, and I spent the next 3 weeks traveling throughout Turkey, speaking with religious leaders like the head of the Greek Orthodox Church and the head of the Alevi community, with political leaders representing the major political parties, with gay rights organizations, with women organizations, and other people who are actively involved in the constitution writing process. And I sat down with them and I sort of talked about what steps need to be taken to write this constitution and what needs to be done. And while I was having these conversations, it didn't occur to me that I was actually doing what anybody at a think tank in Washington or Ottawa does, going out, conducting real research. I wasn't in some hotel conference room pretending to be a delegate of a country, speaking to some college student pretending to be a delegate of a country. I was a real person talking to another real person about real issues and actually making a difference. See, from the first day that we created this organization, we wanted to change the future. We wanted to create a future where you guys would one day turn on the news, and instead of seeing a news story about an engineering student at MIT creating this awesome invention, or a solder student creating this innovative tech startup, you would see an art student or another student interested in policy who convinced the mind of the mayor of Vancouver, or convinced an MP or a congressman, or even the prime minister or the president to change a certain policy. That was the goal from the get-go, and we hope to achieve that goal. So the next time you find yourself at a Mall United Nations conference, I want you to ask yourself one key question. Are you okay with just pretending? Thank you.